The nomination of General Johnny Hyten to be Commander of the United States Strategic Command. We congratulate you on your nomination. We thank you for your decades of distinguished service to our nation and for your willingness to serve once again. Of course, we know today would not be possible without the support and sacrifice of your family and friends, some of whom are with us this morning. As is your tradition, we hope you'll take the opportunity to introduce your family joining you today. General Hyten, threats to the United States and our allies have increased significantly in recent years. We confront national security challenges not just in every region of the world, but threats in every domain, including nuclear, cyber, and space. This new strategic challenge has major implications for STRATCOM. Many leading scholars and strategists have warned for years that we have entered a, quote, second nuclear age. This is not something the United States has chosen, and indeed there are still those that deride nuclear weapons as relics of the Cold War, only to be discussed in the context of reducing and eventually eliminating them. But the reality is that from the Middle East and Southeast Asia to Europe and East Asia, there are nations that increasingly believe nuclear weapons are essential to their survival. Others are enhancing the role of nuclear weapons in their military doctrine and actively considering their use on the battlefield. Pakistan has rapidly expanded its nuclear arsenal and reportedly developed new tactical nuclear weapons. Not to be outdone, India continues to modernize its nuclear triad. Even under the best of circumstances, the Iran nuclear deal gives Iran a free hand to develop nuclear weapons in a decade. North Korea's fifth nuclear test earlier this month is the latest reminder that its corpulent boy dictator remains intent on developing the capability to strike our homeland with nuclear weapons. And then there is China, which continues to modernize its nuclear forces while placing a new emphasis on mobile missiles and submarines. Perhaps the most pressing challenge you would face, if confirmed, General Hyten, is Russia. Russia's aggression in Ukraine and destabilizing actions in Syria take place under a nuclear shadow. Russia is threatening our NATO allies with nuclear strikes, modernizing its strategic nuclear forces, developing a new nuclear ground-launched cruise missile capable of ranging most of Europe, and has fired air and sea-launched cruise missiles against targets in Syria, missiles that could be armed with nuclear warheads and flown against European and U.S. targets. We have to face the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. That's why no matter what President Obama may have hoped for when he came to office, the United States cannot seek to reduce the role of nuclear weapons on our national security strategy. Providing a modern, credible deterrent is more vital than ever, but Strategic Command faces significant near and long-term challenges to that goal. In the next 2 decades, U.S. nuclear submarines, ICBMs, air-launched cruise missiles, heavy bombers, and nuclear-capable tactical fighters will have to be withdrawn from operational service, having been extended well beyond their original service lives. Modernization programs are in place to replace these systems, but there's no slack left in the schedule and a considerable bill to pay. According to official figures, the Department of Defense plans to devote about $234 billion over the next 10 years to operate and modernize our nuclear forces. This amounts to just 3 to 4% of the entire budget each year, but any investment of this size must be subject to the most rigorous oversight from this committee. Today's Congress supports the modernization of the U.S. nuclear deterrent, but I'm concerned that future reductions in funding could delay or harm the development of these replacement systems, increasing strategic risk at a time when Russia and other countries continue to modernize their nuclear capabilities. Just as the nuclear threat continues to change, so too have threats in space. Indeed, America's superiority in space is increasingly at risk. As the Director of National Intelligence told the committee earlier this year, quote, "Threats to our use of military, civil, and commercial space systems will increase in the next few years as Russia and China progress in developing counter-space weapon systems to deny, degrade, or disrupt U.S. space systems." Director Clapper stated that Russia and China seek to exploit our dependence on space to achieve an asymmetric effects. They are investing significant resources in developing a full range of capabilities, including anti-satellite missiles, co-orbital weapons, jamming, and cyber capabilities. Fortunately, in recent years, the Defense Department experienced a, quote, "counter-space awakening." After years of prodding from this committee to enhance its focus, I'm pleased with the department's efforts to respond to Russian and Chinese threats in space. One of your top priorities, General Hyten, would be to put Strategic Command on a war footing for space, because if our adversaries choose to extend war into space, we must be capable of defending ourselves there. Finally, beyond space and nuclear forces, the third component of Strategic Command at present is cyber. This committee has been extremely focused on the whole complicated issue of cyber, and I think many of us agree with your assessment from your advanced policy questions, General Hyten, that the growing importance of cyber warrants the elevation of U.S. Cyber Command to a unified combatant command. We would be interested in your views on timing and the importance of continued coordination between a future unified Cyber Command and Strategic Command. I congratulate you once again on your nomination. Senator Reid.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join you in welcoming General Hyten. Thank you very much, General, for your extraordinary service to the nation. Shortly, you'll introduce your family. They are a big part of your success, so I would like to welcome Laurie, your children, Katie and Chris, and I know your brother Scott wanted to be here, so pass on my regards to Scott. They have sacrificed and supported you throughout your career, and we all appreciate that. General Hyten, you have an impressive record of service to our nation and are well qualified for this nomination. The Commander of U.S. Strategic Command serves as the principal military officer who advises the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on our nuclear deterrent, our space and cyber capabilities, and our global missile defense requirements. As is often said, our nuclear deterrent must be safe, secure, and effective. There is one additional facet that you must be ready to ensure, and that is it must be ready. You will be responsible for articulating and managing the readiness of our nuclear triad and its command and control protocols to deter threats that are existential to our nation. Integral to readiness is the upcoming modernization of our triad, which must be executed in a cost-effective and timely fashion. And once confirmed, I want to hear your thoughts on this issue in much more detail. Strategic Command also deploys our space assets and mitigates threats to them. Given your background, General Hyten, you are superbly qualified for this task, but there are other areas you will also have to lead that include missile defense, electronic warfare, cyber warfare, ISR, and long-range precision strike. A daunting responsibility is to integrate the capabilities and systems supporting these complicated missions so that they mutually reinforce each other and define and fix gaps that exist between them. I look forward to hearing your views on these issues and working with you in the future. And I must apologize, there's a banking committee hearing that is going on in a few moments, and my departure will be simply to go there, nothing else. Thank you.
General Hyten, we have to ask standard questions of all military nominees, and if you just respond, I'll go through this rather quickly. In order to exercise its legislative and oversight responsibilities, it's important that this committee and other appropriate committees of the Congress are able to receive testimony, briefings, and other communications of information. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
I have, sir.
Do you agree when asked to give your personal views, even if these views differ from the administration in power?
I do, sir.
Have you assumed any duties or undertaken any actions which would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No, sir.
Will you ensure your staff complies with deadlines established for requested communications, including questions for the record in hearings?
Yes, sir.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes, sir.
Will those witnesses be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes, sir, they will.
Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify upon request before this committee?
I do, sir.
Do you agree to provide documents, including copies of electronic forms of communication, in a timely manner when requested by a duly constituted committee, or to consult with the committee regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such documents?
I do, sir.
Thank you, General. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Reid, distinguished members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to come before you today. It really is an honor to be nominated by the President to lead U.S. Strategic Command. Mr. Chairman, thank you most for allowing me the opportunity to introduce my family. My family is truly special to me. They are, as Senator Reid said, the reason that I'm here. So starting with the most significant of them all, sitting behind me over my left shoulder is my partner in life, my wife of 29 years, Laura. Not only is she amazingly beautiful, but she's quite simply the finest person I've ever known. If confirmed, this would be our 15th move in the United States Air Force. Every place we go, she works diligently to support our airmen and their families. If I'm confirmed and we get the opportunity to go back to Nebraska, the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines of U.S. Strategic Command will be very lucky, as will the people of Omaha and the surrounding communities, because of Laura. And in spite of the deployments and the force separations, in spite of the challenges of a military life, we, well, mostly she, also managed to raise two incredible children who are with us here today. Sitting to the left of their mom, first is our daughter, Katie, who flew down from Boston late last night. She's a graduate of Pepperdine University, magna cum laude, and more recently graduated from the Fletcher School at Tufts University with a Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy. She currently works for a nonprofit firm in Cambridge in conflict resolution and mediation.
Well, at least you didn't go to Harvard.
I tried, sir, but she did not like. She went to the West Coast, and she never wanted to go to Boston.
She's smarter than her father.
Yes, sir. There's no doubt about that.
You're in trouble now, General.
Senator, I've been in trouble a long time. Next is our
years.
yes, sir. Next is our son, Chris, who flew in from Colorado early this morning. He just arrived at 3 o'clock this morning. He has his degree from Texas Lutheran University in physics and math, but he's also a college All-American in golf. He's currently living his dream as a golf professional in Colorado. He does pretty much live a dream life, there's no doubt. Each of them have grown into fine citizens, and their mother and I are very proud of them. And then finally, one minor disappointment, as Senator Reid mentioned, my little brother Scott from my hometown of Huntsville, Alabama. He'd hoped to be here, but he was delayed en route. He wanted to represent all our family and friends, especially the family and friends that we have in Alabama. Specifically my parents, Sherwin and Barbara, still living in Huntsville, my sister Catherine, who now lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. My parents and my sister could not travel today, but I know they're watching along with Laura's mom and family in California. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee for allowing me to introduce these very, very special people.
Thank you.
And now, on to the business of the day. First of all, I again need to thank the President and the Secretary of Defense for nominating me for this position. I also want to thank the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, for expressing his confidence in my ability to serve as a combatant commander. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with this committee, closely with the Congress, to address the strategic challenges that face our nation. I truly believe that the significant problems that we face can only be worked through open, honest, and timely communications, and you can expect that from me.
We didn't get an advance copy, all we have.
First and foremost, in today's complex, volatile security environment, we must never lose sight of the fundamental advantage that our strategic forces provide. Our nation's nuclear deterrent force must always remain safe, secure, effective, ready, and reliable. As our potential adversaries upgrade their own capabilities, it's essential that we move forward to update and modernize the three elements of the nuclear triad and also ensure our plans are fully integrated with the other combatant commands. We also face significant challenges in space and cyberspace. In space, threats continue to grow, as Senator McCain described, as potential adversaries attempt to counter what has become a critical advantage for our nation and our allies. We must not only be ready to respond, but we must move to build a more resilient national security space enterprise. In cyberspace, intensive and extensive cooperation across the whole of government and with our allies, partners, and friends is required to prepare for, defend against, and respond to cyber attacks. It's also essential we work to fully integrate cyber with the other combatant commands as well. U.S. Strategic Command has many other significant global responsibilities: missile defense, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, joint electronic warfare, to name a few. And if confirmed, I pledge to focus my best efforts ensuring STRATCOM, working in sync with the entire Joint Force, can provide the Department and the nation comprehensive strategic deterrence, assurance, and escalation control options from a multi-domain perspective in support of U.S. national interests. Throughout a 35-year Air Force career that's well beyond anything I ever expected, I've gained invaluable operational and command experience that aligns with U.S. Strategic Command's many diverse missions. I have a deep knowledge in many of these missions, lesser knowledge in a few, but I promise, if confirmed, to learn and understand all the STRATCOM missions and to lead every day to the very best of my abilities. And if confirmed, I also hope to live up to the expectations of the men and women of U.S. Strategic Command, as well as the leaders who came before me, in particular my current boss, Admiral Cecil Haney. He has been a truly remarkable leader and commander. He's been a great boss. He's taught me a lot, and it's very important to me that I publicly thank him for what he's done. It's quite humbling to be even considered for a position with such an amazing legacy and history. So, Mr. Chairman, let me close my remarks with a quote from a great American who reminds me frequently what is really important. That would be our son, Christopher. A few years ago he said, and he said it loud enough for a lot of people to hear, "Dad, I've been watching you ever since you made general, and I've noticed you don't do any real work anymore. You just have people." You know what? I have to be honest, it upset me quite a bit when he said it, because I feel like I have a pretty difficult job. I work pretty hard. I have to deal with some really difficult decisions in today's crazy world. But the more I thought about it, the truer it is. The real work is done by our people, the sons and daughters of this great nation, the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who stand the watch every night, the amazing warriors who deploy into harm's way every day. They're the true heroes. If confirmed, I'll simply be lucky enough to have the opportunity to lead, serve, and work with them a little bit longer. Mr. Chairman, Senator Reid, members of the committee, thank you again. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. Yesterday, you and I had, in a classified setting, a conversation that I've been thinking about ever since. And I know there are a lot of things that you can't say in an open hearing, but is it correct to assume that our adversaries, specifically the Russians, but also the Chinese, are attempting to, or have achieved, an ability to cripple our operations in space?
Senator, I believe that they are building those capabilities today. We have an amazing force structure in space, and both the Chinese and the Russians in particular have been watching those capabilities be employed on the battlefield for the last 20 years. And in response to that, they're building counter-space capabilities to deny us those capabilities in conflict.
So they are developing capabilities specifically designed to cripple our capabilities in space.
Yes, sir, they are.
Which is certainly not something the United States of America is doing.
We're not going down that path, Senator.
So, again, I understand that this is an open hearing, but shouldn't we be really concerned about, especially in the last few years, the increase in capabilities that both Russia and China have displayed, have demonstrated, that if used in a certain way, could literally cripple a lot of our activities in space? And I'm very aware that there's certain sensitivity to some of your answers, but I'm not sure that the American people and even members of this committee are as aware as they should be of this emerging challenge.
Senator, it is an emerging challenge. I believe, as you said in your opening statement, in the last few years, the United States, the Department of Defense, has aggressively moved out to develop responses to the threats that we see coming from China and Russia. I believe it's essential that we go faster in our responses. We've worked with the National Reconnaissance Office and all our joint space forces and developed what we call a space enterprise vision that looks out at the future and says, this is the kind of capability we need to operate in a world where conflict extends into space. I think it's a good vision. The vision will always change. We'll continue to share that information with your committee, sir, and we'll continue to work with the Congress to make sure we can build those capabilities that we need to respond.
Well, I'm not one who enjoys these classified briefings, but I'm seriously considering when we come back having a classified briefing in our committee because the information is deeply disturbing. And I say with some immodesty, I keep up with what's going on in the world, but I was not aware of the significance and the depth of the challenge until our conversation yesterday. And do you think that we have a cohesive strategy to counter this challenge, or do we need to do a lot more?
Senator, I think we have a cohesive strategy of what that end state looks like for the United States that will allow us to continue, as we can today, to defeat any adversary that would want to threaten us in any domain as well as space. I do have some concerns of our ability to move fast enough to build those capabilities that we need to respond to the specific threats I shared with you yesterday, sir.
In other words, what they're developing in a relatively short period of time, months and a few years, is now taking us immeasurably longer time.
We are moving much slower in certain areas than our adversaries. We need our industry and our acquisition process to move faster, sir.
The Russians modernized each leg of their strategic triad. By 2020, 70% of their nuclear forces will be replaced with new systems. Russians violated the INF Treaty by developing a nuclear ground-launched cruise missile, expanded their deployment of air and sea-launched cruise missiles that are not limited by the New START Treaty, and which can target the U.S. In concert with their invasion of Crimea, they threatened our allies with nuclear attacks while exercising their nuclear forces near Allied territory, and are developing an underwater nuclear drone designed to cause maximum damage to the United States coastal targets. What does this suggest about the role of nuclear weapons in Russia's national security strategy, and what should the U.S. and STRATCOM in particular do in response?
Senator, I think there's two elements in the response to that question. The first element is, if you look at what Russia has been doing over the last number of years, I think it's in direct response to what we've been doing as a nation over the last 20 years. They're modernizing the capabilities they see. They've watched the amazing conventional force that we have developed that can significantly dominate any battlefield on the world today, and I believe that they're concerned about their ability to respond in a conventional arena. Therefore, I think it's logical from their perspective to make sure that they continue to modernize all their forces, including their nuclear forces, in all areas. And I think the second piece of the answer to the question is they've also watched the power of our alliances, the power of our partnerships. And they're challenging the status quo across Europe and Crimea in a number of areas, pushing and creating tension within our partnerships and alliances, which is another significant advantage that the United States has built over the last 20 years, sir.
I thank you, General.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to ask just a very few questions, maybe one before I must leave. General Hyten, Strategic Command is responsible for synchronizing our electronic warfare efforts, and years ago, those were jamming, radar, and now cyber is a big part of this domain. Can you give us your thoughts on the interaction between electronic warfare, the traditional, as I suggested, cyber, and also the role of Cyber Command? Just your thoughts.
Yes, sir. So I look at the problem in the following construct. I see cyber as a domain, cyber as a place where we conduct missions. One of those missions we conduct in the cyber domain is electronic warfare. Electronic warfare is basically trying to control the electromagnetic spectrum to your advantage. We have some significant capabilities in the electromagnetic spectrum, but those capabilities have also had less focus than they probably should have over the last number of years. I look at it in my own service where the electronic warfare missions in the United States Air Force have not had as significant a priority as many of the other areas as we've gone, especially the last 15 years of conflict in the Middle East. If I'm confirmed as Commander of U.S. STRATCOM, I can pledge you that I'll continue to look across the entire Department of Defense, all our capabilities, to make sure that we understand electromagnetic warfare, the role in cyberspace, and how we control the electromagnetic spectrum.
Thank you very much, General. I look forward to working with you, and again, I apologize for my departure.
If I might
Thanks.
take a minute of your time. North Korea, are they developing capability to strike the United States of America?
From my perspective, Senator, I believe that they are developing that capability. I think Kim Jong-un has made it clear that's the development. In the news this morning, there was news of a test of a new, very large rocket engine, a rocket engine that he said would be capable of going to the geosynchronous orbit in space. If it has that capability, it has the ability to reach the United States. So I'm very concerned about that. I haven't seen the intelligence report. I'm just commenting on what I saw in the news this morning, Senator.
Senator Inhofe.
Yeah, General, I think there's going to be a lot of redundancy in the questions that are going to be asked up here. Everyone's concerned. We've had people come in and testify to us as to the fact that we're not keeping up where we should. We're not advancing far enough ahead. James Clapper, for several years ago, talked about what we're looking at. Admiral Haney testified before this committee, talking about we're not meeting the critical investment timelines to ensure that our aging platforms and weapons can maintain their superiority. We heard from Admiral Winfield, that was actually last year before the House committee, when he talked about any remaining margin we have for investing in our nuclear deterrent has been steadily whittled away. So we hear this all the time, and then when we have our non-public meetings, we hear a lot worse things. The chairman referred to that. So I just look at this, and I know that we're concerned when we talk about China and Russia, but I personally get more concerned on something that the chairman just touched on. That's North Korea and Iran. I mean, these people, they want to kill everyone in this room. In the case of North Korea, it's run by a guy who's mentally deranged. And this is really scary. I mean, you're getting into the toughest job in the United States of America right now. And I'm very much concerned about it. We know that Russia and China are actively modernizing their nuclear weapons and delivery systems. North Korea continues to develop its submarine, land, and launched ballistic missiles, and conducted its 5th and largest nuke test just 2 weeks ago on the 9th of September. So I think it'd probably be a good thing for you to give us as much of a detailed assessment in this setting as you can on North Korea and Iran.
So the way I look at the threats across the world, Senator Inhofe, is I think that Russia is the most dangerous threat. China's a close second. But the most likely threats and the most concerning are North Korea and then Iran, because North Korea is very unpredictable. It's hard to tell exactly what they're going to do. But I do want to caveat the unpredictability of North Korea a little bit, because if you look at what they're doing with their missile programs as well as the nuclear testing programs, and you compare it to where we are today, it looks very beginning. But if you look at it, when you think back to where we were when we started flying missiles and we started building those capabilities, we had failure after failure after failure. And we ended up getting there. So what concerns me most is they will get there. They're going to get there. And then once they have those capabilities, what are they going to do with them? That's my biggest concern. And if I'm confirmed as Commander STRATCOM, that will be at the top of my list to figure out how we best respond to that threat every day.
I'm glad that's your biggest concern, because it's mine too. Back when this administration first went in, I was critical when they cut this is '09 budget, they cut the missile defense by $1.4 billion, and then delayed and then later terminated the third missile defense site in the Czech Republic and Poland. I can remember being over there and talking to the president of the Czech Republic, which I have just a lot of respect for. And he made the statement to me, he said, you know, if we do what we're talking about doing here in Poland and the Czech Republic, where it's going to enrage the Russians to the point they're going to, so we're taking a risk. Are you sure that you're not going to pull the rug out from under us if we start? And obviously, we pulled the rug out from under them. Now, I've talked to a lot of people that in private, they'll talk about that wasn't a good idea, and I'm not even going to bring that up now. I'm just saying that I didn't like the way we were headed back there at the beginning of this administration. Then we went from 44 of the sites from Alaska down to California down to 30, and I think now aren't we going back up now to the 44 where we started? Was that a necessary drop and then increase? I won't ask you the question, but I think it was. So I just would just say that it's a tough job you've got. I'm very much concerned about it, and I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity, members of this committee and other members who really care in the United States Senate, to hear from you on the versions, so we'll know exactly where we are. The chairman mentioned that, and I want to reemphasize the importance of that be shared with all of us.
And Senator, I'll just say that if the chairman asks, if any of the senators ask, you'll have my top attention, and you'll have a rapid response and my honest opinion all the time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator Heinrich.
General Hyten, first off, congratulations on your nomination. It's an incredibly important post. I want to thank you for your continued service and also your thoughtfulness and your answers to our questions. I want to start with a nuclear deterrent, and obviously last year DOD spent about $15.4 billion on nuclear weapons modernization. At the same time, the NNSA spent about $8.5 billion to service the stockpile and support our nuclear labs. And in total, that's roughly about $24 billion, or about 4% of the base defense budget. So another way of looking at that is we invest about 4 cents out of every defense dollar in our nuclear deterrent, which has effectively served as an insurance policy and prevented another world war for over 70 years. So I want to just get your perspective on how you intend to pursue the continued modernization of the nuclear arsenal and infrastructure, and ask, in your opinion, what will be your biggest challenges to maintain that stockpile as safe, secure, and reliable, as well as ready, as Senator Reid mentioned.
So, Senator, I think it's essential that we always maintain a fully ready nuclear deterrent capability. There should be no doubt that the nation needs that capability as the backstop for everything that we do as a military. If I'm confirmed, one of the duties that I would have as Commander STRATCOM is as a member of the Nuclear Weapons Council, chaired by the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. The NNSA is also on that committee, as well as the Vice Chairman, Undersecretary for Policy. Through that committee, we will look at the nuclear weapons stockpile and make sure that it is always safe, secure, and reliable. In the last year, I've got to visit the 3 big national labs: Livermore, Los Alamos, Sandia, and I go there for space reasons in my current position. But when I'm there, just because I'm curious intellectually, I ask about the nuclear stockpile, and they explain how they're certifying the nuclear stockpile every year. If I'm confirmed, it'll become much more important to me, and I'll look at it a lot deeper.
Right. in sort of a related question, obviously a number of the members have brought up how much the nuclear landscape has changed in recent years, the proliferation we have seen over the course of the last couple of decades. As that nuclear landscape changes, how should that generally inform or potentially change our nuclear posture in the world?
So I think it's important that as we look at the international situation concerning nuclear weapons, that we don't get too focused on just the strategic nuclear weapons. We need to take a hard look at the tactical nuclear weapons. I think the chairman mentioned the tactical nuclear weapons in his statement. We need to look at the non-strategic nuclear weapons and look at it as a total, because I think a nuclear weapon is significant. It doesn't matter how it's employed, tactical, non-strategic, strategic. That's a significant event in the history of the world, and we should look at them together, Senator.
Great. Thank you. In your written response to the committee, you state that the operationally responsive space program has been a successful pathfinder to responsiveness, and that, in quoting you, we must infuse this thinking across our entire enterprise and into the broader space industry, end quote. I agree with that estimation. I'd love to ask you to expand a little bit on how you would pursue that goal. And as emerging commercial capabilities for the small launch market become operational, how would you intend to leverage those kinds of services to enhance the DoD's access to space as well?
So in many ways, it goes back to the chairman's comment, his opening statement, and my response about the need to go fast. The need to go fast is so important in today's world, and many of our traditional processes are very slow. In many ways, I don't like the term operationally responsive space, because I think we're operationally responsive in everything that we do. But the thing about Operation Responsive Space, or ORS, is it goes fast. And it goes much faster than other processes. Those are the processes that we need to transition into the broader space community. And then if you look at the commercial sector has been on the verge of something special for a long time, but I think they're about there, both on the launch side as well as the satellite side. I think in the not-too-distant future we'll have perhaps ubiquitous communications, ubiquitous imagery. If that is the case, and that's in the commercial side, we as a nation need to be able to take advantage of that, because the most important thing for us in many cases is persistence. And we may be able to achieve a lot of that persistence, even though we don't get as high a resolution from those commercial capabilities.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more. I look forward to, if you're confirmed, working with you on that, because I think that really encapsulates much of what we have to do now in terms of reacting quickly. The last issue I'll bring up real quickly is trusted supply of trusted microelectronics. Obviously, NSA requires a trusted supply of strategic radiation-hardened microsystems for our nuclear stockpile. Those are produced at Sandia. I think you visited last year. Our military weapon systems and platforms, however, do not have a trusted supply of microelectronics for the future. And I know this is an issue that the Secretary is aware of. What are your thoughts on maintaining a trusted microelectronics or microsystems capability in government to meet the specific requirements of both the military and the nation's nuclear stockpile? And do you see opportunities there to partner with the private sector to achieve that goal?
So I think anytime you're talking about part supplies, you have to be partnered with the private sector. They're going to generate the supplies one way or the other. I am concerned about the depth of our industry in terms of how many suppliers we have, how are they certified, how are the parts controlled. We have very significant concerns in space. As a commander of Strategic Command, I'll be a demanding customer of the services that support U.S. Strategic Command if I'm confirmed to make sure that we continue to look at that problem across the board. But, Senator, I agree that's a concern we need to monitor.
Thank you, General.
Welcome, General. It's nice to see you and your family here today. I appreciate the visit that we had in my office earlier last week and your candor and the information that you provided. In 2011, the President committed to modernize the triad of strategic nuclear delivery systems, including the air-launched cruise missile And to its credit, in recent years, the department has generally proposed budgets supporting nuclear modernization, and senior leaders, such as the Secretary, have referred to that deterrent as the bedrock of our national security. I believe that that has correctly stressed the importance that we follow through with these plans. Do you agree that we must modernize all three legs of the triad, including the air-launched cruise missile, or do you think these plans should need to be reconsidered?
Ma'am, I agree we have to modernize all three elements of the nuclear triad. I can't state my support any stronger. And I'll continue to, if I'm confirmed, to state that in all forums.
Thank you. Some observers have argued that a penetrating bomber armed with nuclear gravity bombs obviates the need for a standoff weapon, such as a cruise missile. Do you think that those weapon systems are duplicative?
Well, if I'm confirmed as commander of STRATCOM, I'll look into it a lot more depth. But from my 35 years in the military, I believe you need the flexibility that an air-launched cruise missile, a long-range strike option, can provide you. There's always a challenge to a bomber. It doesn't matter how stealthy that bomber is. It doesn't matter how capable that bomber is. I believe a long-range strike option, advanced cruise missiles, gives the President of the United States flexibility in the air arm that is essential as part of the triad. And I would recommend strongly that we pursue that option.
When we were in my office, I told you that when I was visiting with General Kaler, a previous commander at STRATCOM, that he gave such a really great definition and explanation of why we need a triad and the importance of each leg of that triad. You've just touched on that. Would you like to expand on it?
So after a week, General Kaler used to be my boss. So after we talked, I contacted General Kaler saying, hey, Senator Fisher said you had something brilliant about the triad.
Did he remember?
He said, I'm sure it was brilliant, but I don't remember what it was. But no, he did send me a couple of speeches. And basically the fundamental piece of his words, I think, that are very powerful is that each element provides such a significant, different attribute that is so important to the security of our nation in the triad. The bombers are the most flexible. The submarines are the most survivable. And the ICBMs are the most ready and responsive. And each of those is essential to the security of our nation. That's why the triad is so important.
Thank you. Admiral Haney testified before this committee earlier this year that the 2017 budget supported his mission requirements, but he also said, quote, there is no margin to absorb risk. Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree with that assessment on the Air Force side, certainly, Senator, but let me just say that I'm not as fully versed on the Navy programs as I am on the Air Force programs. As a four-star general in the Air Force, I sit in the corporate process, so I'm very concerned about the just-in-time nature of our strategic modernization program on the Air Force side. If I'm confirmed, I'll certainly look hard on the Navy side, but I've talked to the Navy leadership, I've talked to many people in the business the last week, and they're all concerned on the Navy side as well.
Okay, thank you. Your predecessor and other senior commanders have also stated that further reduction in our nuclear forces should come only as a result of bilateral, negotiated, and verifiable agreements. Do you agree with that position?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And can you discuss the relationship between modernization and nuclear reductions? It seems to me that the more modern and responsive our nuclear enterprise is, the less need there would be to retain those legacy systems. But yet, on the other hand, failure to modernize could give us no other option than that we retain significant stockpiles. So what is your view on that?
I think there's been 5 terms that various senators, including the chairman, have talked about today, and that is safe, secure, effective, ready, reliable. And if you look at those 5 terms, that's describes what we have to do in order to modernize our capabilities to make sure that those 5 terms are always there. What you can't have is one element drop off. You can't have the weapons readiness drop off. The weapons have to be ready. The delivery platforms have to be ready. They have to be safe and secure all the way. I think the United States and any nation that has nuclear weapons is responsible for making sure they're all safe and secure, and they're always under political control. I think that applies to any nation, and that's one of the reasons we need to modernize, so we can make sure that that is always the case.
Thank you, General, and I thank you for your service and your willingness to continue to serve in a very important position as Commander of STRATCOM. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your long and distinguished service along with your families. I am here as a father of 2 sons who also went to Harvard and also became military officers, neither in the Air Force, and one is out now, one is still in the military. So it's a rather unusual career choice for Harvard graduates, I know, and I congratulate you on making your choice and serving our country with such dedication and ability, so thank you. I want to ask about one of the legs of the nuclear triad, the Ohio Replacement Program, and you have mentioned very correctly the survivability of our submarine force as a means of delivering and defending our nation, delivering a profoundly important deterrent. Let me ask you, are you committed and will you commit to fully supporting the Ohio Replacement Program?
Yes, sir, I will.
And will you commit to being an advocate of it? Because I think it will take advocates in a time of increasingly threatened fiscal resources and a very expensive commitment that is necessary to being an advocate of it.
I will advocate for all of the elements of the nuclear triad, all 3.
And maybe you can describe for Americans why the Ohio Replacement Program is so fundamentally important to our nuclear defense.
Well, again, from my background, I'm not as deeply versed in the Navy's nuclear capabilities as I am the Air Force's. Nonetheless, I've looked at that recently to some level, and I'll share my thoughts with you, Senator. My concern is that we'll reach a point in the not-too-distant future where the existing Navy submarines will not be able to effectively and safely conduct their operations because of the age of both the reactor and the ship. And we can never reach that point. That's why the Ohio-class replacement program is so essential, because by the time we reach that point, it is essential that we have a new submarine to replace it.
Thank you. I want to shift to the cybersecurity area, which is related to our capabilities in space, is it not?
Yes.
There was a column recently written by David Ignatius entitled "The Cold War is Over, the Cyber War has begun." I think it reflects a growing sense that one of the great challenges, if not the biggest, ahead in the immediate future is our increasing confrontation with other powers, notably the Chinese and the Russians, most recently and dramatically the Russians in recent hacking, over their capabilities in cyber and their apparent willingness to use them against us. Do you have any thoughts about how we can work to improve our response to cyber attacks with a coordinated reaction from our entire government? How can domestic agencies best work with the Department of Defense to shore up our security system, both in space and here? And I might add that the chairman and I recently, in a hearing, confronted a number of our security leaders, Admiral Rogers among them, with this kind of question, and I left, frankly, somewhat worried about the ability of this country to respond.
So much of that question is best discussed in the classified forum, but I'll share my top-level thoughts with you, Senator.
Thank you.
So from a big picture perspective, if you look at space and cyber, and in my current job, we have space and cyber in the same command of the United States Air Force. And a lot of the effects we create are exactly the same. It's to provide information, pathways for information, deny adversaries information in times of conflict. That's what we do in space. That's what we do in cyber. But the difference is the cost of entry into cyberspace is very low. That's the attractiveness for potential adversaries because the cost of access is so low. So to respond to it, you hit the most important thing. It has to be a whole-of-government response all the way through. From a military perspective, I would like to get to the point in cyberspace where we treat it just as a domain where we conduct operations. We tend to contaminate that discussion with a lot of the legal implications, which are extremely important, that usually are worked through either the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, a number of elements. That's why it has to be a whole-of-government response. But from a military perspective, I think it's essential that we look at cyberspace as a place where bad actors are. We need to be able to identify them, and if they're threatening the United States, we need to be able to eliminate that actor from cyberspace. It's the same as any other domain. It's going to be a very complicated process, though, because it is important. As an American citizen, my privacy is just as important to me as I think it is to every other citizen. But nonetheless, we have to figure out how to treat cyberspace as an operational domain. I think you're right to be worried because we're, in many cases, not fully embracing the military aspects of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your service. I welcome that answer. I'd like to pursue it in another setting, and my time has expired, but this is an important topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General, welcome. In your opening comments, you quoted your son, who I think you said graduated with a degree in physics. My son graduated with a degree in physics and said almost exactly the same thing about me. I just have people now. But I welcome you and congratulate your family on being here today. I've got maybe some ground level questions to ask. One is on the current status of the GPS OCX project. It's about 5 years, looks like it's right now, 61 months, 5 years or so past due. Could you talk a little bit about your position on the significance and the importance of that project?
So I was quoted in the press, Senator, of calling that program a disaster. I think any program that's 5 years late and $1 billion over budget meets the definition of disaster. It's horrible. And it's embarrassing to me that we find ourselves in that kind of position in today's day and age. We should not have that kind of program, but we do. The concern I have is the legacy program we have right now has significant information assurance vulnerabilities. Basically, we're plugging those holes as fast as we can, and the best way to do that is with people. And as you were talking about, people are our most valuable resource, and we have to divert a lot of people to secure that critical capability for the United States and the world. The OCX program would fix those problems. And so I've told the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics that if he thinks that program will succeed, I will support it because we need that capability desperately. If he thinks it will fail, I'll support the termination of that program. It's up to him. Right now, he believes that program will succeed, and they're doing 3 months deep dives into that program to make sure that it will, but we're going to watch it very closely all the way through.
Well, I think that the people involved in it, to the extent that the people who were involved in what is now $1 billion overrun and 5-year delay, that we need to make sure we have other sets of eyes looking at that to make sure that the decision to move forward or to cancel the project is one that has independent objective input. I have a question about the current arsenal, and this discussion came up in last year's NDAA. We have some weapons that I understand are reaching a point where they wouldn't be used and that they need to be decommissioned. There are others that if we decommission them, some think that we would be unilaterally disarming. Could you talk a little bit about that issue and where you are on it?
I'm not as deeply versed in that area as I would be if I'm confirmed and to become the Commander of Strategic Command. I can guarantee if I'm confirmed, I'm going to get into that in a significant depth. But looking at a number of the capabilities that we have issues on the weapons delivery platforms. whether that's the submarine we were just talking about, whether it's the ICBM, whether it's the bomber, whether it's the long-range strike capability with the new cruise missile. We have issues with our nuclear weapons that we have to continue to look at and figure out how to modernize. If I'm confirmed, I'll work closely with the national labs and the National Nuclear Security Administration to make sure that we watch those capabilities closely. And then I have some concerns on our nuclear command and control capabilities aging out as well. And I think we need to watch closely those capabilities and make sure we modernize those capabilities along with the rest of the enterprise.
Thank you. I have a question about unity of command. I think you lean more towards unity of effort. So I'd like to have you talk a little bit about why you do that in the context of maybe something along the lines of one of our satellites get damaged by an adversary. Who's in charge in reacting to that threat? That'd be one way. That'd be one part of the context I'd like you to answer the question. The other one, I think you were part of a war game, Shriver 15, and I'd be kind of curious to see if there were any challenges exposed concerning that coordination and command in the context of unity of effort versus unity of command.
So, Senator, I'm probably one of the biggest believers in unity of command in the world. And when we started down this project to figure out how we command and control space capabilities, I have to admit that I was a very vocal opponent to the unity of effort construct. I honestly didn't think it would work. But you know, we all have a process, we all have bosses, and we decided we would pursue the unity of effort construct in real experimentation with the intelligence community, the National Reconnaissance Office, and see if it would work. And to my surprise, it actually did work. And it worked effectively because the director of the NRO and the director of national intelligence made sure that if we had to make a decision quickly, that decision process would work very effectively through an operational center, and the commander of strategic command would be the one to explain it to the President of the United States if we had to go down that path. So we ended up in a very good place. I have to admit I was a little surprised as we went through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, I'd like to put a finer point on your son Chris's observation. I worked here 40 years ago as a staff member and was once called upon to set up a hearing and called the Office of Management and Budget for a witness from the administration. The fellow said, we're going to send you the Deputy Undersecretary of such and such. And I said, well, I don't really understand these titles. Can you tell me who this guy is? And his answer, if I ever write a book about Washington, will be the title. He said, he's at the highest level where they still know anything. I think the bad news is you and I are now above that level. Deterrence has been a theory and a doctrine that has served this nation well for 70 years. It's really, I think, been a hugely successful theoretical construct. But the problem is, it seems to me in the modern day, is it rests upon a premise of rationality on both sides. Does deterrent work, deterrence, the theory of deterrence work against a madman or a suicidal fanatic? Do we need to be thinking about deterrence 2.0 because of that potential lack of rationality on the other side that wouldn't be concerned about the destruction of their country? Or perhaps they're possessing nuclear weapons and don't have a country to destroy.
So, Senator, I think we need to look at deterrence 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and the deterrence in the 21st century, I think, is fundamentally different than it was in the 20th century. I think deterrence in the 21st century involves all elements of national power, and just not our nuclear deterrent. It involves space, it involves cyber, it involves our conventional forces. It involves offense and defense on the strategic side of the house. I think you have to look at the integrated defensive capabilities if you're talking about responding to North Korea or Iran, and that defensive capability becomes an essential element of our deterrent posture.
But we also have to think about who we're deterring and what works, what would be the, I mean, again, the deterrence is an idea that mutually assured destruction, but you have to tailor it to the other side.
And you do. And I think if you look at North Korea, for example, the unpredictability is the hardest thing to deter. How do you deter somebody or something that is unpredictable? It's very difficult. That's why you have to have a defensive mechanism that will assure that if they wanted to attack the United States, it will fail, and then leave the president all the response options with the rest of the capabilities that we have in order to respond.
They have to know that.
And they have to know that, so we have to make sure that is readily transparent to all the world and all our adversaries.
That we have both the means and the will.
To defend ourselves and to respond if we need to.
A few months ago, a group of us went on the NAOC, the National Airborne Operations Center, and the thing that struck me as we went through a nuclear attack scenario simulation was that in that situation, A, there's a very limited amount of time for decision-making, and two, only one person makes the decision, the president. I had never, there's no check and balance, there's no Congress, there's no required consultation. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. That's the Constitution.
And that's a sole responsibility of that person who will be making that decision in a matter of minutes. I think the exercise we were in there was 28 minutes. If it was a missile coming from offshore, it would be 5 or 10 minutes. Is that correct?
And yes, sir, and like I said, I love the Constitution. I swear an oath to defend the Constitution every day. And Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution is one of the reasons I'm here, is because the advice and consent clause in the Constitution requires me to prepare for the Senate to be confirmed before I move on. But it also establishes the President of the United States as the Commander-in-Chief, the sole Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces.
And there's no advice and consent on that decision that could hold in the hands of the President the future of civilization.
And there are two elements, two big elements in that clause in the Constitution. One establishes the President as Commander-in-Chief, and the other is advice and consent of the Senate.
But advice and consent doesn't apply in this situation.
The Commander-in-Chief is the Commander-in-Chief. And that's the role.
Co-equal branches of government, okay? Executive, legislative, and judicial. And the president proposes and the Congress disposes. So I understand your point about the commander-in-chief. This administration has done more to ignore the Congress of the United States than any administration that I have been associated with.
Going back to the NAOC, command, control, and communication, are you satisfied when we're talking about modernization? The focus is almost always on the triad. It seems to me that's an area that also needs modernization and strong consideration.
Yes, sir, it does. And the big challenge as we look at modernizing the nuclear command and control capabilities of the United States will be the cyber threat, which will be much different than it was when we created the current nuclear command and control environment.
My time's just about over. This is a one-word question. Should Cyber Command be elevated to a separate combatant command?
Yes, I believe it's time to elevate Cyber Command to a separate combatant command.
Thank you. Thank you, General. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank you, General, and thank your family for your service to our country. I wanted to follow up on one of the answers to your advanced policy questions, and you were asked, what are the most serious strategic threats facing the United States today? And among your answers, you mentioned the increasingly provocative and destabilizing behavior by potential adversaries like Iran. What I wanted to ask you is, why do you believe that there's significant concern about the adversary of Iran? And also wanted to hear your opinion about the impact of their pursuit of their ballistic missile program, which they have done quite aggressively, even post-JCPOA.
Yes, Senators. So I think you provided part of the answer when you started talking about the ballistic missile program. But I think there's three elements that concern me about Iran in the last year. Element number one is they continue to be the foremost state sponsor of terrorism in the world. That should be enough to cause the nation concern. Second is their continuing pursuit of new ballistic missile program and testing ballistic missiles over the last couple of years. And then third, a statement after one of the tests early in March this year by a member of the Iranian military that said, we're building this capability to threaten Israel. So you put those three statements together, and you look at the technology they're pursuing, that's why I'm concerned about Iran.
And their ballistic missile program, from what I hear from your testimony, you believe this is a real threat to Israel. Is that true?
They stated that it's a threat to Israel.
And what about, though, also even our forward deployed troops in the European area and also our European allies? I assume it represents a threat to us as well.
It does.
And would you agree with what DNI Clapper has said when he's repeatedly testified that Tehran would choose ballistic missiles as its preferred method of delivering nuclear weapons?
I agree with that.
And so I think we also need to focus on making our own homeland when it comes to their testing and development of ballistic missiles. Would you agree with that?
I think that has to be part of our missile defense. I believe that's the missile defense architecture in the Pacific, and it needs to be in the Atlantic as well.
And when we look at their even most, I mean, they've been even post-JCPOA agreement testing ballistic missiles on multiple occasions. Do you believe that their activities are inconsistent with the UN Security Resolution 2231, which calls upon Iran not to undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using such ballistic missile technology?
That's more a policy question, but from a military perspective, I find that kind of behavior extremely destabilizing and threatening.
So how are we going to address their testing issue? What do you see your role in your command and ways that we should be more aggressively pushing back on Iran on something of deep concern to us and our allies?
So again, Senator, I think a lot of that question is for the political realm. My job is to, if I'm confirmed as commander of STRATCOM, would be to provide military advice to the President, military advice if asked by this Congress. I think you're asking for my military advice. My military advice is that we always have to make sure that our capabilities to respond to an Iranian threat are visible, powerful, and ensure, into the deterrent discussion we had a while ago, that no adversary that would want to take us on will, at least they will think twice and reconsider their actions before they do that. That's the job of the commander of U.S. Strategic Command, and I've confirmed I'll take that very seriously.
Thank you, General. And in the political realm, I would hope, I've introduced legislation to impose real sanctions on Iran for their ballistic missile program, and I've been very disappointed that the administration is, from my perspective, pretty much ignoring their testing of ballistic missiles. I wanted to follow up with you, would love to have you come, if confirmed, to visit New Hampshire, because we have the 23rd Space Operations Squadron at New Boston Air Force Station, and New Boston operates the largest Air Force satellite control network remote tracking station, and they provide STRATCOM with very important satellite command and control capabilities. So I wanted to extend that invitation, and I hope you'll take me up on it.
Thank you, ma'am. I've been to New Boston many times. It's one of the most beautiful bases in our country. It's a hidden treasure, but they do a incredibly important mission for the nation as well. My wife has been up to New Boston as well. There's pretty amazing airmen that do some awesome work up there.
Well, we're glad. You're very familiar with New Boston, and they're going to be an important asset to you in this new position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank your family, General. Thank you to all of you. General, STRATCOM recently provided a requirements letter to the DoD leadership related to hypersonic weapon systems, and specifically conventional prompt strike. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the broad topic.
And I know some of this information is sensitive, but to what degree it is possible, what are your thoughts on the importance of making progress on conventional prompt strike?
I think that from my position today as Air Force Space Command, I think that that has a role to play in the future, and if I'm confirmed as Strategic Command, I think that I'll need to work with all the combatant commanders to make sure we get the requirements right. Because I see a significant role for conventional prompt global strike in terms of our ability to hold any target on the planet at risk at any time without having to move into the nuclear realm. I think there is a powerful requirement there, but it's just not a STRATCOM requirement. It is a requirement that I think all combatant commanders will have to be involved with developing to make sure we get it right before we start going down that path.
The sooner CPS transitions from a DoD risk reduction project to a Navy program of record, I think the sooner that system will reach its initial operational capability. What is your view on the ideal timing for CPS from STRATCOM's standpoint?
I think from the Commander STRATCOM perspective, I think yesterday would be a good answer. I don't think there's, if we had a capability to provide prompt global strike, just think how it would fundamentally change the equation, to go back to Senator King's question about what deterrence is. Because now you have a conventional capability that can deter as well as a nuclear capability that can deter. So from a Commander STRATCOM perspective, I would like to see that answer being yesterday.
The Air Force, General, I think, has an historic opportunity to leverage research and development, common parts, and lessons learned from the Navy's recent Trident modernization program to reduce risk, enhance savings, and field an extremely capable follow-on to Minuteman III. There's been some difficult back and forth on how best to leverage commonality across the two services. But when I go back to my home state of Indiana, Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane, our Navy and Air Force personnel are working very closely on this. And we're doing incredible work for the Air Force, particularly in the area of radiation-hardened electronic parts. So I know collaboration between Navy and Air Force is happening on a daily basis at the staff level. If confirmed, will you work to maximize commonality and collaboration across the Air Force and Navy strategic missile programs to reduce cost and risk?
So if confirmed, I will advocate for that. The Commander of STRATCOM is not in the direct acquisition realm. That would be the service chiefs for the most part. But I'm a huge believer, as we build things for the future in particular, to make sure we can leverage commonality across those capabilities. I'm not a big believer in trying to go back and insert commonality in retrofitting, because almost always that costs us an enormous amount of money. But every time we modernize, whether it's a component, subcomponent, their entire weapon system, we should look at commonality as much as possible.
Do you have any idea at this point where you see the greatest potential for commonality and collaboration?
I think the greatest potential will be in the missile technology of the future, especially the microelectronic side of the missile technology that will go into the future ground-based strategic deterrent element that the Air Force is pursuing now to leverage capabilities from Navy missile programs.
Well, let me ask you this. I think we're coming on a bow wave of cost in nuclear modernization in around 2025 to 35, which is a ways off, but I also think we have an obligation to try to help at this point. Last year, Admiral Haney said the nuclear enterprise currently represents 3% of DoD's budget, and the figure could grow to 6% in out years under current plans. How do you see the defense budget flexing to accommodate the things we need to do, and how to prepare the next administration for success in this effort?
Senator, I think the nuclear triad is affordable as we go forward in the future. But it should not be looked at as a blank check. I don't like when I see the numbers that show up in the paper of $1 trillion or $85 billion or $500 billion. I don't like to see those numbers, because they tend to be self-fulfilling prophecies. If we say it's going to cost that much, it ends up costing that much. We need to define our requirements specifically, figure out what we need to build, and then I think within the defense budget, because it is the backbone of what we do, it is everything that our Defense Department is based on. We have to modernize the triad, and I think the money will be there to do that, but we still need to do it smartly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General, thank you for the effort you made in very thoroughly answering some advanced questions, which I've had a chance to review. On page 24 of your answers with regard to electronic warfare and spectrum operations, you say, among other things, Russia and China have each committed significant resources to both electronic warfare capabilities and dedicated military operators. And then you talk about their layered advantage that each of these countries has attained. Would you explain what their layered advantage is and enlighten the committee a little bit with regard to China and Russia in this regard?
So, Senator, if you look at what China and Russia have been looking at themselves for the last 20 years, they've been looking at the United States develop an incredibly powerful conventional military that without a doubt can dominate any battlefield in the world. And so they have taken those lessons and started building capabilities to respond to that. One of those lessons is in the electromagnetic spectrum. They see us dominating the electromagnetic spectrum. They see us using GPS, satellite communications. They see us basically conducting information age warfare, where in the not too distant past it was industrial age warfare. So they're developing layers of capabilities in the electromagnetic spectrum, in cyber, in space, to try to gain a strategic advantage in those areas. Our job is to make sure they never get an advantage in those areas. But it's clear that that's what they're trying to do from my perspective, Senator.
Well, you further say, with our increasing spectrum dependence, assuring access to and freedom of maneuver within the electromagnetic spectrum can no longer be guaranteed. This is an area where we must improve. So what suggestions will you have for us in that regard?
So I will continue to advocate, if confirmed, for improved capabilities in each of the domains I just described, space, cyber, as well as the electromagnetic spectrum. I think we have to build resilient capabilities in those areas to be able to fight through and respond to threats. It's no different than a threat to an airplane, a threat to a ground system, a threat to a ship. The Navy has a layered approach in how they respond to a threat to the fleet. We need a layered approach in how we respond to threats in space, threats in cyber, or threats in the electromagnetic spectrum.
And that resilience needs redundancy, is that correct?
It can be achieved through redundancy, through disaggregation of capabilities, through proliferation of capabilities. It can be achieved through defensive systems that can defend you against, such as anti-jam capabilities, to allow you to fight through a jamming scenario, which is an electromagnetic spectrum operation.
Sir, I read a novel a while back. It's actually I think was published in 2009, entitled 1 Second After by William Forster. And I wonder how fanciful that is. I don't know if you've read that novel, but the concept is that there's an electromagnetic pulse which basically shuts down our entire GPS grid and our electric grid and renders this country pretty much defenseless. How big of a layered approach would Russia or China have to accomplish that? And is this just fanciful science fiction that could never happen, or is it something we need to be prepared for?
So I haven't read that book, Senator, but
But I've described it.
Yes, sir, you did very well. So the concern is an electromagnetic pulse that goes off in space. That's the concern. It is the most dangerous threat that a space officer, which I am right now, is concerned about, because it is the most threatening and the most damaging. But if a nation in the world does that, they've now breached a very significant threshold, and the response of the United States could be broad and varied, and more likely not a response in kind, but a response in another domain.
It would be more damaging than a nuclear bomb, would it not?
It is a nuclear bomb, basically. It is a nuclear bomb in space. That's what creates the electromagnetic pulse.
Who has the capability of doing such a thing now, if they were mad enough to do it?
Anybody with a nuclear weapons capability and a launch capability into space.
And how prepared are we to respond, to prevent, not to respond in a mutually assured destruction manner, but to defend against such a thing?
So our nuclear command and control architecture, including the space elements of missile warning and satellite communications, is very well positioned to respond and operate through that scenario. We've built that into our scenario. The rest of our infrastructure is not as well prepared to respond. Now, the good news about GPS, for example, is it is a global architecture, and we can go in another forum into the details, but there would be a slight degradation of a single, if a single electromagnetic pulse went off, it would potentially take out certain elements of the GPS constellation, but it heals itself as it comes over. So I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but it's fairly resilient because of numbers. Our missile warning and protected SATCOM are very resilient because of the defensive mechanisms we built on them. Together, they will allow the United States to continue to fly and fight. But the concern is, what does it do to our civilian infrastructure?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, General. And I would just say that your upcoming new position, if you're as successful as you've been in selecting your wife and raising 2 fine children, you're going to do great.
Thank you, sir.
With that being said, sir, the whole procurement system, B-52 came in, we put it in operation. We built it in 52, developed in 52, and came in operation in 1955. We built 744. Still in operation, okay? We did total upgrades for $1.1 billion over that period of time, maybe a little bit more. Then we come along and someone makes a decision, we need an F-35. We're on track to spend $1.5 trillion. And we had the F-15, F-16, and F-18. How come all of a sudden, who makes that decision? We're trying to get rid of the A-10 Warthog, which has ground support. The other ones do what they do. But all of a sudden, we spend $1.5 trillion. And it makes you think of President Eisenhower saying, be aware, be very concerned about the industrial. As you know, his comments as far as on what we do in procurement and defense. How do we explain that, and why is it 15 and 16 and 18 not able to be upgraded in continued service?
So, Senator, it's really not a question for me. It's a question for the Commander of Air Combat Command. But as an Air Force officer, I do have some opinions, and so
Love to hear.
I'll be glad to share those opinions with you. The F-15, the F-16, the F-18 are fourth-generation aircraft. Going up against a modern 21st century threat, they cannot penetrate many of the threat scenarios that we are going to have to be able to penetrate.
What generation is it, 52, B-52?
B-52 is at least a third-generation weapon system. And, oh, by the way,
Still the most efficient and most cost-effective.
it is, and it is because of the cruise missile that it carries as well, because it can't penetrate either. But we're going to need to penetrate with fighters, and we need a fifth-generation fighter. We need the F-22 and the F-35 to penetrate those threat environments. We have to have it for our airmen to be able to fight and win in any conflict in the future. One of the reasons we need a B-21 is because the B-52 cannot penetrate. We will need a penetrating capability out of a bomber. We'll need penetrating capabilities in fighters. We need to be able to handle any threat scenario. As for the cost, it should not have cost that much. I think any American who looks at the cost and is proud of that cost is not seeing the big picture. It costs too much, but that capability is critical, and it will be awesome on the battlefield. It'll create an advantage for the United States for decades to come.
I have questions being asked by West Virginians every day. Does the President of the United States have the absolute ability and the power to call for a nuclear strike without any input from Congress, legislators, any input from generals whatsoever to negate that? He or she alone can call for that strike.
My job as a military officer is to follow orders of the Commander-in-Chief.
So there's no checks and balances. You don't check with someone else to make sure, but if you get that order from the President, then it's a go order.
The President of the United States will ask me for my military advice. I will give it as strongly and powerfully as I can if I'm confirmed as Commander of Strategic Command, but he is the Commander-in-Chief, or she is the Commander-in-Chief, and their orders will be followed.
So that person, whoever the President may be, has the ability, sole ability, to call for a nuclear strike.
They're the Commander-in-Chief.
Also, I'm very supportive of the National Guard, as you might know, and a versatile role in supporting national security. I would like to know how you see that your assessment of National Guard's performance in space, missile defense, and cyber operations, how they could be more effective.
So it's spectacular. But in many ways, we've just scratched the surface. If you think about many of the missions that we do in space and cyberspace, they're stateside missions. It's perfect for the Guard and Reserve. Some of our most impressive cyber units are Guard units because they can leverage the civilian workforce and the civilian population. The Guard and Reserve are stepping up into the space mission area in new and exciting ways. I just met with the head of the Air National Guard and head of the Air Force Reserve, and we're looking at new ways to expand both space and cyber and Space Command. If I'm confirmed as the commander of Strategic Command, it is a total force problem in everything that we do, and we'll leverage the total force in every way possible.
Thank you, General. And anything I would say on that, do you think that we're exercising every option and opportunity we have to enhance that with the Guard, or there's more needs to be done?
I think there's always more needs to be done. I'm not sure exactly what that is right now because we meet with them frequently, but I just look at the potential that's out there and realize that I think there's even more that can be done, but we're doing a tremendous amount.
Thank you, General.
Yes, sir.
I think, General, you ought to read the Constitution. Nuclear strike, depending on the circumstances, would require a declaration of war. Only the Congress can declare a declaration, approve of a declaration of war.
Yes, sir.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General, congratulations, and thank you for being willing to take on this task. And thank you to your family for being here and for all of the service they've also provided. There was discussion earlier about North Korea and the erratic behavior of North Korea's leader, and we saw, as you pointed out just this morning, that they tested a new rocket engine to launch satellites. It's the latest in a succession of nuclear weapons tests and ballistic missile launches as they steadily increase their nuclear stockpile. So can you discuss what you see as STRATCOM's mission and operations as we look at what we can do to deter what's happening in North Korea, if anything?
I think we have two roles, if I'm confirmed as Strategic Commander, that we have to play. Role number one is the strategic deterrence and assurance mission for our allies. And I kind of lump those both together. The ability to deter our adversaries and assure our allies that they are defended by the capabilities of the United States, I think is extremely important. The second piece of that puzzle is to make sure we provide the right kind of ready forces that can allow the United States, in concert with the other joint combatant commanders, to respond to those capabilities across the board.
Senator Inhofe earlier talked about the missile defense system in Eastern Europe as being one of the actions that might have contributed to Russia's aggressive behavior. Do we see that the THAAD missile system in South Korea has the potential to produce that kind of a response from North Korea and from China, for that matter?
I'm not sure, ma'am, if I can properly assess how China or North Korea would look at that, but from my military perspective, the THAAD missile battery does not change the strategic deterrence equation because it provides a point defense capability against a close-in threat. It doesn't impact the ability of a strategic force to effectively operate.
And do you think that's clear to China and North Korea?
I think we've done everything in our power to make it clear. How they perceive what we've said and what they believe, I don't think I can comment on that, ma'am.
Thank you. There was a very interesting segment of 60 Minutes on Sunday night. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was talking about the nuclear deterrent. And one of the people they interviewed was former Secretary of Defense William Perry, who they were asking him if there had ever been a close call in terms of someone launching a nuclear weapon from the United States, and he pointed to an incident in 1977 where someone had put in a training tape that was misinterpreted. As you look at, and the reason I think that is so, has so much resonance right now is because I think this campaign for president probably has had more discussion of nuclear weapons and who should control nuclear weapons than any campaign I remember since 1984. So as you look at the current nuclear command and control structure and architecture, are there any concerns that you have about the potential for something unforeseen to happen, for somebody to make the wrong call and a weapon to be launched inadvertently?
I believe that our nuclear command and control architecture is the most resilient, robust, command and control architecture that can be created by man. I think there are multiple checks and balances through the system that you have men and women in the loop that can respond to those kind of anomalies and make sure that if it is an anomaly that they can report that up. Nonetheless, if you heard what I said, it was created by man. If it's created by man, there's no way to create perfection, but that's why we put so many checks and balances in the system all the way up to make sure that if we do have to give a recommendation to the President of the United States, that recommendation is clear and then based on solid data.
One of the concerns that I've heard from folks in the foreign policy arena is that unlike during the Cuban Missile Crisis and much of the other periods of our history, we don't have the same kind of communication channels between us, our military leaders, and the military leaders in Russia. I don't know if they didn't suggest that China was in that category as well, but certainly said that that was true of the United States and Russia. Do you share that concern?
I don't have enough information to really comment on it, except to say that I'm a big believer in military-to-military relationships. And I think that if we have military-to-military relationships with allies, friends, and potential adversaries, we're in a better posture to diffuse the situation if something should happen. So if I'm confirmed as a commander of STRATCOM, I'll find out the details of what relationships there are right now, and then I'll advocate for improving those relationships in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General, congratulations on your nomination. I think you're highly qualified. I want to also, as we talked about, I appreciate your example at our alma mater and what you did there and what you stand for. Sometimes, I think sometimes our universities in this country need to see and respect the military and ROTC, and I think you're a great example of that. I want to just continue on. I know the discussion's been a lot about missile defense, and I want to kind of continue on what Senator Shaheen was talking about and Senator Inhofe. Do you believe that it's part of our job, both your job, if you're confirmed as a combatant commander, and the Senate's job, to anticipate threats to our nation and then be able to address them?
So I think it's the responsibility of any public servant to look at that always. My primary job if I'm confirmed as a combatant commander, will be to be ready, make sure our forces are ready to respond today. But I have a secondary job is to advocate for capabilities to respond to future threats in the future. And if confirmed, I'll take both of those jobs very seriously.
So it's my sense that, you know, we talk a lot about North Korea here and the threat, and it's definitely a growing threat. But I think that the American people probably continue in general to see that, and maybe most members of Congress, as a regional threat to Japan, to Korea, to the region. Today's there was a Wall Street Journal piece today that North Korea successfully tested a high-powered engine for launching satellites and intercontinental ballistic missiles. Do you believe that in 2 to 3 years, the leader of North Korea is going to have the ability to range the continental United States with nuclear weapons? You think that's just a matter of time? Maybe not 2 to 3, maybe 3 to 4, but don't you think the American people soon, maybe within your tenure, if you're confirmed, are going to wake up to the fact that this is not a regional threat? This is a direct threat that a crazy dictator from North Korea has the capability to range our country with intercontinental ballistic nuclear weapons. Do you think that's going to happen within 5 years?
Sir, I can't put a date on it. I've talked extensively with the intelligence community over the last couple of weeks. I don't have a confident date, but what I can say and what concerns...
But you think it's going to happen eventually?
It's a matter of if, not when.
Right.
It will happen, and we
So shouldn't we start preparing for that now?
We need to start preparing for that
So
now.
when that happens, the American people aren't going to wake up and go, oh my gosh, nobody's even thought about this?
I think we are thinking about that, and we have to be prepared for it.
Let me ask, I think that we're not doing enough in terms of missile defense to prepare for this inevitability. Can you give me your sense right now with 40 ground-based missile interceptors in Alaska, a couple in California, a new LRDR radar system being deployed. Do you think we're doing enough in terms of missile defense to be able to anticipate a threat that we know is coming? Literally a dictator who has no stability in his mind being able to range our country with nuclear weapons. Are we doing enough?
I'm a big believer in missile defense. I think we're doing a lot, but I think we need to do more. I think that the number of interceptors we have to constantly look at that ability of that force to respond to the size of the threat that would be in North Korea in the future. I think the force is sized correctly today. I have some concerns about the size of that force in the future. We need to always be able to monitor that. If I'm confirmed as Strategic Command, I'll pledge you to take a hard look at that, along with the Commander Pacific Command, to make sure we understand what that response option is, sir.
Well, General, I'd like to work with you on that issue because I think it's a critical issue for the defense of our nation. I think a lot of senators are very interested in it. And to be honest, I don't think we're doing enough to be ready for a threat that we know is coming. And if that, if we're not in that position to tell the American people, hey, we knew this was coming, and we took decisive action to create a strong missile defense, I think that that's not what we should be doing, any of us. Can you just describe, in terms of the technical aspects, how important LRDR, we all often talk about ground-based missile interceptors, but the radar systems themselves that we're now trying to deploy?
So the sensor elements are extremely important. Number one, you can't target a weapon without the sensor, so you need the sensor to be able to cue that. That starts with the overhead infrared capabilities that we have in orbit today, hands off to radars today. The radars we have are old. They need to be modernized. One of the most critical radars that we're building now is the long-range discrimination radar at Clear in Alaska to be able to respond to that threat. That's a critical element of any future architecture, especially in that part of the world. And then we also need to look at a space-based element. We need to be able to broadly use the global nature of space to be able to add a global tracking capability, because it not only allows us to track, but allows us to operate weapon systems more efficiently than just firing many at one time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, I think you're highly qualified. I look forward to voting in favor of your nomination. Confirmation.
Thank you for your service. Thank you to your family. I want to start with a little bit about the B-2. In August of this year, we deployed the B-2 from Hyten to Guam, at least the second time this year that we have deployed these aircraft to the U.S. Pacific Command area of responsibility. In March 2013, two B-2 Spirit bombers conducted a long-range precision strike by flying more than 6,500 miles to the Korean Peninsula and returning to the continental U.S. in a single continuous mission. I know that you understand how important missions like this are to demonstrating our commitment and our capabilities, and what an important role they have in deterrence, particularly as we look at the actions of North Korea. Our adversaries continue to develop advanced systems which eventually could hold even our homeland at risk. I know there's been a lot of discussion regarding the affordability of maintaining, upgrading the nuclear triad. There are some improvements to the communication systems of the B-2 Spirit, which will extend the viability of this flexible dual-use platform. And what would be the consequences of a delay in completing the communication upgrades to the B-2?
Senator, I think we have to look at the communication upgrades of the B-2 in concert with the entire bomber force. Right now, it's probably the most important element of our bomber capability, and so that capability is extremely important to maintain the viability now and in the future. But I think the best answer that we owe to this committee and to the Congress is an answer that looks across the entire bomber force. I think that's a question the Air Force should answer, but as the commander of STRATCOM, what I will advocate for is an effective bomber force to handle all the threats that we have in the future. And then it's the Air Force's job to say, well, then we have to upgrade the B-2, or we can wait to the B-21. Right now, I think the B-21 is a little bit too far off to respond to that. but I think the answer has to be across the entire bomber force.
Yeah, I want to make sure we don't make the same mistake with the B-21 that we made with the 35, and that was we started pulling back on the FA-18s and the Hornets because of the anticipation of a system that clearly was way over budget and way out of time. And as a result, we had vulnerabilities on our aircraft carriers that we shouldn't have, and we're continuing to scramble to make sure that we don't have those. So I want to make sure that I make that point. In addition, I'm really proud that the 131st Bomb Wing at Whiteman of the Missouri National Guard was the first National Guard unit to be certified to conduct a nuclear mission. This took a tremendous amount of work at Whiteman and a tremendous amount of commitment on the part of the active Air Force at that base along with the Missouri National Guard. Can I get your commitment today to continue this integration and continue to allow the Guard to play this important role going forward?
So, Senator, I'm a huge fan of the total force. The Guard and the Reserve provide a huge capability to our forces worldwide. So I pledge to constantly advocate for full integration of the Guard into all our military forces across the board. If I'm confirmed as STRATCOM, it'll be inside STRATCOM.
And I also want to talk about missile defense as it relates to North Korea. The first ballistic missile defense test against an ICBM missile range target will be conducted in this fall. First time this has happened since 1984. A second ground-based interceptor was scheduled for FY 2017, but due to budgetary constraints, it will have to slip to FY 20. It was scheduled for 2017. It's going to have to slip to 2018. A GAO report found that the agency charged with developing this system, the Missile Defense Agency, delayed or removed 40% of its planned flight test and reprioritized the testing plan because of the fiscal constraints that we have placed upon the military. Could you address briefly, if we don't stop playing games with what we need to invest in our military as it relates to OCO and, spending money off budget, what is going to be the result in terms of our capability, in terms of ballistic missile defense, particularly in light of what North Korea is up to?
Senator, I think we desperately need a missile defense capability. It's got to be robust, tested. Our adversaries, North Korea in this case, have to be concerned that it will work if they operate against it. If it's not there. Therefore, just like in every other element of our Defense Department, I think we need stable funding, close working relationships with the entire Congress, especially this committee, to make sure we understand exactly where we're going. I'm concerned, though, if we go back, and I know you had a hearing last week on readiness, that if we go back into a Budget Control Act level, that many of those decisions that we'll make will be bad decisions for the security of the United States.
Thank you very much, General. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator.
General, you are an outstanding choice for STRATCOM. You have been an outstanding and have done an outstanding job as the head of Air Force Space Command, a subject that I understand a little bit about, and I just want to say that for the record. We thank you, and I look forward to you being our combatant commander. Would you characterize your thoughts on the need for modernization of our nuclear arsenal as well as our nuclear command and control?
Senator, I think it's I think all three elements of the triad are essential to the security of the nation. I think it is the foundation of what we build our entire defense posture on. Each of those elements of the triad are aging out at a similar time. In order for us to have an effective triad in the future, we're going to have to modernize each element. We're going to have to modernize the capabilities for an ICBM, which will be the ground-based strategic deterrent. We need an Ohio-class replacement program on the sea leg of the triad, and we need the new bomber, and I also believe we need an advanced cruise missile, the long-range strike option. I think each of those has to be pursued. I think they have to be pursued in an integrated manner. And then we have to pursue the nuclear command and control piece on top of that. The nuclear command and control, I think, is the most important piece of the puzzle. And as we continue to focus on the delivery platforms, which are essential, we just can't take our eyes off the nuclear command and control capability, because without those, we can't effectively execute a nuclear deterrent option.
And specifically, do you have any thoughts on the modernization of, I said the nuclear arsenal, meaning the nuclear weapons?
So I think as we look at the nuclear weapons, we have to consider the environment that we're going to operate in. We have to consider how many nuclear weapons that we need. I think we need to take a whole approach to looking at the existing nuclear stockpile as well as what we need in the future nuclear stockpile. Ideally, if I'm confirmed as commander of STRATCOM, I'd like to have some flexibility across platforms with those nuclear weapons. It's really a conversation meant for a different classification forum. But at this classification, I'll just say that if I'm confirmed, I'll work closely with the national labs as well as the other element of the nuclear weapons environment to make sure that we have a solid plan going in the future, especially given the test environment that we're in. Thank you, Senator.
With your assessment from your advanced policy questions that the growing importance of cyber warrants the elevation of the U.S. Cyber Command to a unified combatant command. Is it also your professional military judgment that maintaining the dual hat relationship where the commander of Cyber Command is also the director of NSA is in our best national security interest?
That is my belief, sir. I strongly believe that right now. There may be a day in the future where that is not the case, but today is not that case.
I thank you. That discussion continues, and I was going to talk with Senator Reid and other members of the committee, but I think we may ask you to come back, perhaps maybe not this week, but later on, to brief us on the information that you provided me with yesterday. It's quite disturbing, isn't the word, compelling, I think, is a better one. Jack?
No, sir. Again, General, thank you for your service. I look forward to voting for your confirmation and doing it expeditiously so that you can get out there and lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.